Hello, and welcome to Community Pulse, a new public affairs show on CAN TV. Let me get some housekeeping out of the way. Community Pulse is presented by the Foxglove Alliance. The Foxglove Alliance is a 15-member organization of public health care groups in Chicago. Community Pulse is going to feature local leaders and organizations involved in Chicago public health, medical innovation, and well-being. And the Hectone Institute of Medicine is actually the sponsor of Foxglove and this show. And Community Pulse is also brought to you in partnership with the Healthcare Council of Chicago and Hectone's Nurses and Humanities program. My name is Levi Moore, and I'm the coordinator of the Foxglove Alliance. And I'm also one of the chairman emeritus of CAN TV. So I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Aisha Jaco, the executive director of Westside United. Aisha, thank you for being the first person I get to host on Community Pulse.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and to break the ice and to be the first guest.
Okay, great. And just to let you know that we are colleagues. As I said, the Foxglove Alliance is a group of 15 public health care organizations, and Westside United is a member of the Foxglove Alliance. And when I'm wearing, it could be I can wear my Hectone hat, my Foxglove hat, or my CAN TV hat. I've worked with Westside United on numerous projects. So best way to describe it is like I'm in a place I love, talking about issues I really think are important with a dear colleague. So I guess you say I'm kind of living the life today. I'm having a great day. So let's get started. Have a conversation. So for those who don't know, what is Westside United?
Sure. So Westside United is a collaborative founded in 2018 by healthcare institutions who ultimately wanted to take a deeper dive in addressing Chicago's life expectancy gap between downtown and 10 Westside communities. At the time, there was a 16-year gap, and the hospital partners, including Rush University Medical Center, Lurie Children's Hospital, UI Health, Cook County Health, Ascension, and Sinai, sat around the table to think about how they could leverage their impact as anchors in the community by doubling down on their ability to hire locally from Westside zip codes, because if combined, they'd be the #1 employer in the state. Wow. They wanted to think about how they could leverage and diversify their procurement spend and annual investments that they were making into businesses by creating a pipeline for Westside businesses to secure hospital contracts. They wanted to think about their ability to impact the neighborhood and built environment through social impact investing efforts, healthy food access. There is a focus on access to care, looking at out of the key drivers in the life expectancy gap that range across now COVID and 5 other major conditions. We decided to focus on hypertension management and infant mortality on the West Side, given the number of live births that our systems as a collective deliver each year. We also wanted to focus on education, thinking through our ability as a collaborative to provide internships for residents in Westside zip codes, primarily high school students, and also career pathways. Because what we found at the onset of thinking about how to decrease this gap was that people from Westside zip codes who were employees of some of the institutions were retiring 30 years later in the same entry-level non-clinical position, going back to a community where they don't own where they live or have access to some basic necessities that create a better quality of life. So Westside United's aim in those examples of our focuses are around thinking through how you look at a collective or comprehensive approach by looking at access to care, neighborhood and the built environment, the economic vitality of Westsiders, and the education landscape. And so we are a collaborative that focuses on that, leveraging the power of anchor hospitals.
Now, one thing I've always thought that was really special about Westside United, because a lot of times you'll have groups that will come into a community and sort of take over. Or they'll say, we have this great idea that was developed in New Hampshire and we want to do it on the west side of Chicago, or in my case, East St. Louis. So I've always can you talk about how you make sure that there is neighborhood input?
Sure. So just as those hospitals came around the table to think about a collective solution or how they could be positioned to better serve the West Side, another crucial part in that was capturing the voice of community. After that collaboration of hospitals who had traditionally been competitors, siloed, sat around a table like we are now, the other piece was, okay, we found these truths to be self-evident, but what does it mean for community? Because they did not want to overpromise, underdeliver, be prescriptive, dictate, and so there was intentionality around capturing the voice of community through listening sessions, by establishing a planning committee in the early days, where you had people who lived and worked on the West Side sit across from hospital leaders to plan around what we heard in those sessions of talking to close to 1,000 West Siders, and people articulating what they wanted for a better quality of life. We heard four things that we all want: safe neighborhoods, equitable access to care, jobs, and meaningful things for young people to do. Or what people said they wanted. So we listened to that and layered that across our pillars, that if we're going to address this gap, we've got to look at access to care, we've got to look at the economic vitality, we've got to look at education, we've got to look at neighborhood. So we took that, what we heard from community, and began to co-create strategies with community in the driver's seat, leveraging our resources to build our model. So that planning committee is now a community advisory committee where you were part of that inaugural cohort of, again, residents, leaders that work within the West Side that sit across and in partnership with hospital leadership and other anchor partners like the American Medical Association, for instance, to make decisions around how we make impact, how we measure impact. And so that is crucial for us. We recognize the genius of community leaders and residents, and that they have just as much weight as those with the resources in dictating where resources go in their communities and how they're sustained. So that's crucial to our model, and we're very proud of that, and we will continue that on this journey to creating a better quality of life for West Siders.
Okay, now, when you think Westside United, most people think healthcare, public healthcare. I have a background in economic development, and I've actually told people that you are operating the best community economic development program, this neighborhood-based, that I have seen in the state of Illinois. So you talk really about what the impact of investing in the small business branch.
Absolutely. So when we think about, again, the anchors in our healthcare partners, what they bring, it was very important to have low-hanging fruit be activated in terms of what hospitals could turn around in immediate investment. And so one of those examples was hiring. Like, if we've got a workforce of 40,000 across all of our partners, what would it mean to direct 1% of those hires, or 18% of those hires, be from the West Side by 2023? So we began to be intentional about setting targets to get people in the doors of hospitals, employed, gainfully employed, and once they're there, also that they're put on a trajectory to build their ability to have a better quality of life. And so we have career pathways that are activated through tuition reimbursement from hospitals that allow people, after a year of being employed, to become a medical assistant or a certified nursing assistant or a respiratory therapist. That was one that we were exploring. So we were thinking about the trajectory of what it means to be gainfully employed, to be able to own where you live, etc. Another piece in that is supporting small businesses. When we think about corridors in Garfield Park, for instance, that were decimated during the riots of 1968 and never rebuilt to some degree, that we wanted to look at how we referenced wealth building, but most importantly, how we directed our resources. So we built a small business grant pool in partnership with JP Morgan Chase, Allies for Community Business, to begin to fund businesses across the West Side to build their capabilities for hiring more staff, building out their marketing plans or what have you to be a more viable business, ultimately to enhance the wealth of those corridors. We also looked at pipeline development from procurement and supply chain. But I should go back to say for businesses, we made a commitment to invest $2 million by July 2023 in Westside businesses. We also thought about the hospital supply chain and answered the question, what if we redirected a portion of our spend where we wanted to shoot for $40 million a year being spent with businesses from Westside zip codes? And so that was a real target that we put out and that we're very close to meeting by our July 2023 goal. We thought about for social impact investing, setting a target to spend $20 million or to invest $20 million into Westside projects that are in the portfolios of community development financing institutions. And these are essentially entities that loan to nonprofits and other business models to help them in their development of wealth building, or in some cases we funded organizations that work to do affordable housing initiatives, etc. So for us, it was looking at this anchor power that the hospitals bring, their ability to invest, their ability to spend locally, their ability to support businesses and the workforce as a key pillar in our movement toward decreasing the gap. To your point, economic vitality and viability is a core component. You can put a health center on every corner, but if you don't address the economic well-being of residents, we won't see what we need to see in terms of decreasing that gap and creating a better quality of life.
Okay, thank you. Now, personally, I actually think that a key part of Westside United being so successful is you. So, who is Aisha Jaco? How did you get to where you are with Westside United?
Well, I must say, thank you, first of all, for that sentiment. I am a Westsider, born and raised, born at the former Bethany Hospital in North Lawndale, educated primarily on the West Side, grew up in East Garfield Park, one of the communities with the lower life expectancy. So I've always had a love for the West Side in my heart because it was pivotal for me becoming the person that I am today. And I will say, coming into Westside United and reflecting on my experience as a West Sider, one that really stuck out for me was my grandmother, who migrated from the Mississippi Delta in the late 1950s, ultimately settled in Garfield Park, was a faithful church-going woman. 6 days out of the week she was there, and she passed away in 2006 after being diagnosed with cancer 2 weeks later after her diagnosis. And so, coming into Westside United, one of the first things that we did was fund the expansion of a community health worker model in communities like Little Village. And so it made me think that what if at my grandmother's church she had a community health worker that was there at Bible study with the congregation, making sure that people met their regular appointments, etc. Maybe she'd still be here. So my lived experience on the West Side definitely fuels my passion and the connection that we think about in terms of bringing residents and community voice at the forefront of this work. So, born and raised on the West Side really had an impact on me in the current work that we do. Also, just my love for the arts. I have a youth dance company, and we were born out of the Austin community at Austin High School. So the West Side is just through and through in my blood and DNA.
You are the West Side.
I am the West Side to a certain degree. Born and raised. If the West Side had Lake Michigan, I'd still be West. So I am South now. But seriously, the work that I do is because of what I experienced, good and bad, an honor to lead this work that is really looking to bridge this gap and to provide a better quality of life for residents, which I think once we solve for that here, we can take that to every urban center, East St. Louis, and other places that have similar disadvantages and disparities. So excited about just being able to leverage my lived experience and to do this work.
Great. Now, let's get a little bit more conservative. I was at this large meeting that was being held, and you were going to launch Westside United the next 1,000 days. And it was the path forward. And then the pandemic hit. And like everybody else, you had to veer. So what did you do during the pandemic, and how close are you back to being at that point when you were launching the next 1,000 days?
Absolutely. So yes, I remember that day vividly, March 5th, 2020 at Malcolm X College, close to 500 people. We were unveiling this strategic plan that we had worked on with our community partners, our healthcare partners, with Bain, and it was amazing. And we were excited about the framing of that, which one of our healthcare partners said, let's think about the first 1,000 days of a child's life. And there are critical developments that have to happen in order for this child to have a successful start. So we took that approach, thinking through what we could commit to the West Side. And it was like, all right, let's accelerate anchor mission work even more. Let's hire more, let's invest more, let's spend more. Let's think about alignment across all of our health systems so that we have a standard of care that if you go to county or Rush or wherever, it's the same standard of care. If you're a Black woman delivering a baby on the West Side, that you're gonna experience or have a great experience. So these were things that we were thinking through. Also as a convener for the West Side, how do we leverage our seat at the table and make sure that across all of our 10 communities, equity is at the forefront? And then we said a lot of what's in our DNA started as a pilot. So we see that as a power or skill that we have that we can share with community. And so the guise of that 1,000-day plan fell across accelerating, aligning, convening, and piloting. And then 2 weeks later, our world changed. Yeah. In fact, the day of that event, Rush had admitted its first COVID patient.
Oh, wow.
We later found out. So we a lot of what we were doing were things that we just had to level up on. The first thing we did was support the emergency food system with emergency grants to food pantries across our 10 communities. We also doubled down on the support we gave small businesses, given the modifications they needed to make to stay afloat. But one pivotal moment in this transition period was a call from Mayor Lightfoot, who said, hey, Westside United, literally called one of our staff on a Sunday while making dinner to say, we need a strategy. The city of Chicago needs a strategy to respond to COVID and how it's exacerbating and pretty much increasing mortality and morbidity in Black and brown communities. Can you help? And from that moment forward, we helped co-convene the City of Chicago's Racial Equity Rapid Response Team. And our strength was that we had already convened a table where you had public health, healthcare, and community solving for the inequities in healthcare. So one of the first things that we knew we had to do was to bring in community leaders from those communities. So Auburn Gresham had the first death. Austin had some of the higher rates in mortality and morbidity, along with South Shore. So we started with leaders from those communities. Ultimately, we saw the increase in brown communities, and we brought members from Little Village, Belmont Cragen, Pilsen, and they became the voice of the people. They sat across from public health and healthcare leadership to help craft a strategy. And that was so beautiful to me.
Well, because there was an issue of trust in that, trusting what was coming from the Illinois Department of Public Health, the Cook County, the city, and they didn't have the relationships.
The relationships, exactly. So these ambassadors, these leaderships who we counted in this first responder category, right? Because they were on the ground coordinating IT supports for families who were suffering from the digital divide. They were mounting large-scale food operations from local churches. So they knew firsthand where to go and how to disseminate the resources and information. As you said, they were the trusted messengers. So from there, we became a national model. We had departments of public health calling from around the country just to learn about what they had heard in that short time. So that was part of our pivot. We also worked with the Oprah Winfrey Charitable Foundation. She called and made her first gift to Chicago in over 20 years to Westside United, the Myatha Redemption Project, 40 Acres Fresh Market, Rush University Medical Center, and My Block, My Hood, My City. We created from that funding Live Healthy Chicago, where we provided funding across 20 Black and brown communities to community organizations that, again, were on the front line giving resources. So in that case, we became essentially, in our role as a convener, a leader in this public health space with the mayor's office, with the Department of Public Health, our healthcare partners and community. And then we became a foundation of sorts to get these dollars out to people who needed it the most. Because following Oprah was Jack Dorsey and Rihanna, the Chicago COVID Response Fund here in Chicago. So we were tasked with continuing our work of grant making, but at a larger scale, where we ultimately directed $10 million in emergency funds across organizations, you know, spanning across 20 communities. So that was a massive lift for our team, but it wasn't so far outside of the 1,000-day plan.
Okay. Oh.
So I'm happy to report that, you know, come this March in our 5th anniversary, we will be very close to meeting those targets that we set out pre-COVID.
Great, because I'm on the small business grant work group, and we were concerned about, okay, do we need to go back to try to reinforce some areas that we already invested in just to get back to point zero?
Yes. Yes, that was critical. Thinking about COVID and just the massive shifts businesses had to make, looking at their workforce, their ability to adapt to technology, you know, to meet the demand of changing their model to the new world, you know. So absolutely, that was a big target or question that we had to ponder with. And then we also heard from businesses in that cohort that they needed supports, you know, beyond the dollars, just around mental health and other things that impacted their ability to run a successful business, just given the very climate that COVID created.
And so, aren't you part of a study by the London School of Economics?
So Rush University Medical Center, one of our lead hospital partners, is probably engaging in more deeply there. But I will say that our model did influence that review into the life expectancy gap in London.
Okay.
So Dr. David Ansel on our team has definitely influenced that work and has offered up the model to help give insights to how we're doing work here in Chicago.
Okay. Now it's hard to believe we're in 2023.
Yes.
Where do you see Westside United doing, prioritizing from now to, let's say, 2025?
So going into between now and 2025, we are proud members of the Garfield Park Right to Wellness Collaborative, who is the winner of the Chicago Prize, Pritzker Traubert Chicago Prize. So we are the second community awarded a $10 million grant for massive community redevelopment in West Garfield Park. So we're very excited about our seat at the table there, where ultimately there is the Sankofa Wellness Village. And in this village, there is the creation of a wellness center that will localize access to care. Erie Family Health will be the operator of the federally qualified health center there. We have Rush University Medical Center providing a health and wellness space in that building. The Leaders Network will create a credit union to increase, the number of banked residents. We have the YMCA creating a recreation space. Local nonprofits will be housed there, like Westside United. So very excited about that project. Also in this village, there's an art center, the Myafa Center for Arts and Activism, in partnership with New Mount Pilgrim Church. So residents will have access to a state-of-the-art facility where they can engage in poetry, dance, music, and other art forms. In this village, there is also a community grocer initiative that was created in response to the closure of Aldi's, and also Save a Lot. So we're working with folks on the ground who have done pop-up food grocery initiatives to account for there not being a grocery store, and ultimately we're working to get 1 or 2 grocer options back. And then lastly, there's a small business incubator where there will be supports for entrepreneurs on this corridor in terms of funding and support. So for us, if you think about our model and what we think needs to be in place to impact the life expectancy gap and to create a better quality of life, it's all in this corridor.
Okay.
So it's a place-based strategy that activates our mission, and that speaks to the spirit of collaboration. This was born out of community members working for the last 3 decades and beyond to get this sort of investment on this corridor. So we're very excited, and that building opens in 2025, or that village.
Oh.
So that's part of what we want to see.
A good target date.
A good target date, and then we just have other things within our structure where we'll be our own 501c3 by that date, and we hope to have just some impact around our mission to decrease the gap by the establishment of that village and other things that we're looking at that we want to impact in terms of hypertension and maternal child health disparities.
Okay, we're getting near close, but how do we find out more about Westside United or get involved or...
Yes, so you can go to our website, www.westsideunited.org. Everything is there. You can sign up for our newsletter where we have timely updates. That's a great place to start. We are also in the community this year, so we turn 5 in 2023. We'll have a large annual report out in March, and through the end of the year, we'll be stopping in all of our communities across the West Side just to connect with residents.
And that was missing during the pandemic. That we were doing everything by Zoom. All people do not communicate by email.
Yes.
And so now getting back to the community.
Absolutely. So we're excited to be in person to continue our engagement as it was when we first started in 2018. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to start to wrap this up. Once again, my name is Levi Moore, and this is one of the first shows for Community Pulse. I'd like to thank my first guest as a co-host, Aisha Jaco, and I'm not the only host. There's going to be a number of people, Megan Phillip with Healthcare Council of Chicago, and a number of nurses from Hectone's Nurses in the Humanities program. And you can watch this show. We're on bi-weekly or semi-monthly on CAN TV channel 21, and you can also watch it, stream it on cantv.org. Oh, and by the way, I downloaded the app right before I came over here, so you can stream it using your app. So with that, I'd like to thank Aisha, Omari, and CAN TV Not-for-Profit Services. And once again, my name is Levi Moore, and thank you, and please continue to watch Community Pulse. Thank you.